The latest entry into an increasingly crowded, subcompact, higher capacity market is the Mossberg MC2sc. We shot it. Stick around, we'll talk about it. I want to welcome you to Rider's Range while we take a look at the MC2sc by Mossberg, their latest subcompact. This follows on the MC2 that was introduced last year as a compact model, and the Mc1 which was introduced on Mossberg's 100th anniversary back in, I believe, 2019. We did a review on the original Mc1 had a couple issues with it. Eventually got them resolved. Certainly wasn't my favorite gun, so I sold it. And then the question is, how does the MC2sc stack up? Does it solve all of those problems? We'll put a link to the one of the original videos up here. So the MC2sc is similar to the Mc1sc, at least as far as the upper goes. The slide is same length, 3.4-inch barrel on a stainless steel slide with a DLC finish. I don't have my Mc1sc, so I can't do a comparison to see if this slide will fit on the other. I don't know if it does or not. The glass-filled polymer frame is supposed to be about the same length as the Mc1sc. Now the Mc1 compared to the Glock 26, by the way, everything I show here is unloaded. No magazine in either of these, and there's nothing in the chamber of either of these. So the Mc1 was about the same, or Mc1sc was about the same size as the Glock 26. So you can see they're really almost identical length, very similar profile on the top, and about the same width. The MC2sc is just a hair wider in the grip, but the grip length is just about the same as the Glock, so therefore it's going to compare favorably to the Mc1sc, at least size-wise. Obviously, capacity is a whole different ballgame. Capacity on the MC2sc, 11-round magazine, flush fit, which I don't have for this one. This is a T&E gun that I have borrowed, but I also have an extended 14-round magazine, which of course gives you the 10 plus 1, or excuse me, the 11 plus 1, or the 14 plus 1, or if you don't have the fortune of living in a free state, you're limited to 10 rounds no matter what. This is a direct competitor to a number of other firearms. Again, I don't have all of them here, but you Springfield Hellcat, the SIG 365 or XL, Kimber Mako Shield Plus. There's a whole bunch of them in this category. Now we'll bring out some of those others a little bit later. Just like the Mc1sc, forward cocking serrations, which aren't super aggressive, but they do work for a press check. Rear cocking serrations that are also not super aggressive, but they do work. Yeah, I don't have any problem with the gun slipping. This particular gun, this sample has 3-dot sights. Certainly not my favorite, but they've been adequate, and they're adequate. The relationship between the front and the rear, so the gun itself theoretically should be accurate. We've had a couple of problems with that, and again, we'll get into that a little bit later. This gun is also available for about $100 more with True Glow tritium night sights. Nice thing about the MC2sc is it is optics ready right out of the box. Pop off 2 set screws here and take off the plate. And without a mounting plate, this will accommodate the micro red dots with the J-point or shield RMSC footprint. It should also take the Crimson Trace and possibly even the Swamp Fox Sentinel, all without having to put a plate on it. And all of those sit low enough in the frame. You can see that's a fairly thick cover plate on there, so those will sit low enough in the frame, so they should co-witness with the iron sights that are on the gun. And one thing I do like about the Mossberg, of course, is the unique takedown. You don't have to rack it, pull the trigger, and then take the gun down, which has been one of the downfalls of Glock or Glock-style actions. Even though this has a very similar action to the Glock, it does take down much different just by removing the back plate, pulling the striker out, and then the slide comes off without having to pull the trigger. And speaking of the trigger on this is about 4 3/4 pounds, average over 5 pulls. And the trigger was one of the things that I didn't like on the Mc1sc. Now this one has a, again, we are unloaded. This one does have a straight trigger on it, which is becoming more in vogue these days. And this breaks at about a 90-degree angle almost. and of course it's a pivoting trigger, so the lower your finger or scale, if you're weighing it, is on the trigger, the farther away from it is from the pivot point, so therefore the lower the reading in theory. And you've got quite a bit of take-up, and of course you have your usual drop safety blade in here, not a full safety, just a drop safety, and of course it's a safety to keep the trigger from being pulled if anything pushes it from the side, which isn't how the trigger is normally worked anyway. It does have a lot of take-up, and there's a little bit of it's not quite Glock mush in there, but you can feel that it's quite a long wall before it finally breaks, but it's a clean break, and does break and stop at the same time. There's no over travel adjustment on it, but there is a little tab in there in the frame that serves as an over travel. Reset on this is yeah, probably middle of the pack. It is audible, it is tactile, and again, a fairly decent trigger. I like it better than the Mc1sc, and the complaint I had about the Mc1 is that I would get finger pinch right down here, where, because I always run a trigger really low, and my finger would get pinched between the trigger and the trigger guard. I don't find that on this gun. The texture on this is, grip texture is about the same as you see on the Mc1sc, and for the right hand, or the primary shooting hand, the texture is all in the right places. It's got texture on the front of the frame, matching type of texture on the back, fairly aggressive, it's almost checkering on both sides, which does lock my shooting hand in quite nicely. It also has an index point for either your index finger or your support thumb, either one on the front of the frame, and it's a good index point. Also has a rail on there. There's not a typical Picatinny rail. I don't know if it's going to be proprietary or what. So you can hang a laser, a light, maybe one of those pair of fuzzy dice, or one of those deodorizers you hang from the mirror of your car if you want to hang that on the front, as long as it'll fit that rail. A complaint about the grip texture, though, is there's really nothing other than for my thumb. There's really nothing from my support hand. I like as much contact with the heel of my support hand in here as possible, but the area right there where it's most likely to contact is pretty slick, and so there's no real texture contact there. Same thing with up here at the top where the inside of my thumb would hit. There's really no texture up there. I haven't had any problem with the gun slipping in the hand. It ran the plates okay. Again, I'm not a speed demon with shooting, but I didn't have any problem with the gun slipping out of my hand. So it does compare, though, with a number of other guns. Let's take a look at first with the probably one of the newer entries in here would be the Shield Plus by Smith & Wesson. Of course, it is also empty. This is a 14 round, and it's a 13 plus 1 in it. It is just about the same length as the MC2. It is just about the same width. The grip is just a little bit narrower, just about the same height. And so it'll give you 14 rounds. That's 13 plus 1 actually. And is what it says, 13 rounds in the magazine. So 13 plus 1 versus 14 plus 1. So you're going to lose about 1 round capacity, but it is just a hair narrower, and it's actually a little bit lighter. You notice the Shield Plus with 14 rounds comes in at 26.4 ounces, whereas the MC2 you got 27.3 ounces. So another gun that this would compare favorably with would be the Kimber Mako. The Mako is a 13 plus 1 also. The magazine says 10 on it, but you can get 13 in the extended magazine that comes with it. So you got 13 plus 1 versus 14 plus 1. And the Mako comes in at 28.5 ounces. It's actually a fair amount heavier than the Mossberg. And of course, Mako does come optics ready, or optics included, either one. And again, about the same length. And with the extended magazine in either one, they're just about the same height, and they're about the same width. So very similar, except the Mako, of course, is a little bit heavier. The one of the perennial favorites, of course, is the 365 XL, which is going to be just a hair longer than the Mossberg, and with the 12 plus 1 magazine, so 13 round capacity versus the 15 round capacity in the Mossberg. Pretty close to the same height. Of course, the SIG has the advantage of a 15 round magazine, so you got 15 plus 1, and it's a little bit, just a hair taller than the Mossberg when you've got the 15 round mag in it. This will also take a direct mount with the optic. Of course, the difference on the SIG versus the Mossberg, when you mount the optic on the Mossberg, you still have the rear iron sight. With the 365 XL, of course, you lose that iron sight, so you have to get an optic that does have some sort of a co-witness notch in it, like this Holosun does. And then, of course, there is the regular 365, which kind of started the trend. And it's going to be obviously a little shorter. It's going to be about the same width. This one has the whole grip sleeve on it to make it just make it fit my hand just a little bit better. Obviously a whole lot shorter, but with the 365, regular 365, you've got an option of 10 round plus 1, 12 plus 1, and again that's going to make it still shorter than the Mossberg. Or you can go with the 15 plus 1, which now puts it to just about the same height as the Mossberg. Pretty close anyway. So again, this is the perennial, almost a pocket type favorite. The 365 weighs in at, when you got 16 rounds in, it's 26.6 ounces. So again, it's still a little bit lighter than the Mossberg. And of course, you put 11 rounds in it, and you're down to 23.7 ounces. So those are some general comparisons. So it's kind of mid-pack, and again, there's nothing really outstanding about this gun over any of the others. So it comes down to preference. How does it fit your hand? How can you shoot it? How does it feel? Oh, holsters too. I didn't have a holster for it, so we tried in the CZP-10S holster. It fits fairly good. It's got a little bit of movement to it, but it does lock in so that it's not going to be falling out on you. And it also does fit in the CZP-01 holster. Now it locks in really tight and snug, so yeah, there are holster options without having to get one that's, you know, if you've got one of these in your stable anyway. But it does lock in very tight on this. Of course, you do have an adjustment on this holster so that you can reduce that lock just a little bit. So if you have something for a CZP-01 or a P10S, then you're in luck for a holster. I had some trouble with this gun shooting. Actually, the original Mc1 SC, once I got past the initial feeding issues and failure to go into battery issues, it was a fairly accurate gun. It shot a little bit looser than I wanted, still shot a little bit high. This one, I shot it indoors at 15 and 25 yards, and it wasn't one of my better days, so the groups were a little bit loose. So it was shooting a little high and a little bit left. And I know that a lot of people say right-handed shooters push to the left. I've got enough trigger time in competition to know that I'm not pushing the gun to the left. So on that same day, I shot the Springfield Emissary, and if you go back and look at that video, you'll see that I actually shot that one a little high right. So obviously different trigger with a 1911. But no, I don't push a gun to the left, so this one's shooting a little left. Now, it does have drift adjustable sights, so if it is shooting a little bit left, you can knock this rear sight to the right just a hair, take care of that. The only way to take care of it shooting high is to put a taller front sight on it, or a lower rear sight to dip the muzzle a little bit, or better yet, put an optic on it and solve all those problems. I did have a little bit of trouble, and again, because I had to aim low right on all the plates. When I ran the 12-yard plates initially, I did miss a few because I'm used to shooting a gun that's point of aim, point of impact. This was not doing it, so I wasn't reliably compensating for where it was shooting. At 25 yards, I was still trying to aim low right, but I was struggling a lot at 25 yards. And again, we're going to roll that footage in here in just a minute or so. At 50 yards, it just was not consistent. No matter where I was aiming, it seemed to be kind of scattering all around the plate. I had to really struggle even at the 12-inch plate. I didn't dare try the 10, the 8, or the 6 like I normally do. And again, I did much better at 50 yards with the MC1 than I did with the MC2. So some of it, I think, is the gun. Some of it, I think, is just me not being able to fit this particular gun the way some others. Now, I do want to say this is how I worked with this gun, so it's my experience, period. Your mileage may vary. You may find that you shoot this gun extremely well and that everything works. So before you send any hate mail down there about how I don't know how to shoot or whatever, okay, again, it's my experience with this gun. Yours may be totally different. All right, again, it's in the middle of the pack. I haven't found anything really outstanding to warrant the Mossberg over any of the others. Okay, it's a decent gun. For defensive purposes, it's more than adequate. It'll do everything that you need it to do at normal defensive ranges, or just don't try to take out a hostage taker at 50 yards with it, or even 25 for that matter. But again, that's not what this gun is designed for. Put an optic on it, I'm sure it's going to be a whole lot better. And again, you can pick these up for the about the mid 500 bracket without night sights. Add $100 to that with night sights. Stick an optic on it. You can get optics for a couple hundred on up, and this is going to be a decent gun. So that's maybe not so short look at the MC2sc. It's a T&E gun. It is going back. I have no desire to go out and buy it, but again, for its intended purpose, it works just fine. Thank you for dropping into Rider's Range.